Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and tonight we have, I'm looking forward to this, we haven't had them on for a little while, is John Darash, Carl Appel and also Gerard from the National Liberty Alliance. Hi to you all. Did Gerard make it? Right. So how are things going for National Liberty Alliance?
The Attorney General, and 2 years ago we filed a lawsuit directly against the United States Supreme Court and both houses of Congress, and they haven't really answered anything, so they've been kind of in default. And on August 17, 2019, we filed a decision and order. We turned the court into a common law court and opened up and made some decisions and orders. We made a declaration to restore the law of the land, and we filed quite a few other papers since. We also filed a decision and an order concerning the merging of equity and law, which was an assault upon our Constitution and we the people. We also put a second indictment on Judge Kahn. He's a federal judge who tried to close our court case down once before. We indicted him and threatened the clerk with an indictment should they remove the papers from the process, the judicial process. So they didn't do that, and we're still filing papers. They're still taking them. So this judge came in trying to shut us down again, and so we gave him a second indictment. We also been sending some writ mandamuses to the United States Supreme Court and to Congress. And we also moved our gun case. We had a Second Amendment case that was in the federal courts that was operating under civil law, and we moved it into this common law court that we had opened up. And on November 16th, we moved it for cause and refiled the papers to the governor here in New York in both houses. And so far, we haven't heard anything, and there's another 6 days or so. They will be defaulting. We're expecting them to default. We're also filing another paper this week, reiterating the major assaults upon our liberty by the United States Supreme Court. What a lot of people don't realize is that, and we really didn't, it's only the past year or so, maybe even less than a year, that we really come to understand what they had done. There was what's called the Rules Enabling Act back in 1934. And that gave the United States Supreme Court the ability to write their own rules for the court. And in 1938, they unveiled those rules and started to process that through the courts. And of course, we were about entering into World War II coming up, and I think that kind of worked out for them because it was sort of like keeping the people busy as they were changing the process in the court. So what they did is they combined equity and law, which are two different things. It's like putting together water and oil, and got rid of common law or natural law. It now is called civil law, and that's why we've been having so many problems in the court. So we're revealing all of these acts of treason. There's about 10 acts of treason that the United States Supreme Court has been behind with the federal judiciary. We do understand that a lot of judges are between a rock and a hard place, and they're kind of stuck in a situation, but time is coming when they're going to have to stand up with the deep state being, drained out. And I know Q had mentioned that we're moving into phase 3, and phase 3, I believe, is the revelation, the revealing of all these indictments and all of the corruption that has been behind our government, or in our government, shall I say. Going to reveal a lot of enemies, both foreign and domestic, in those cases. And phase 4 is will be the actual trials. So moving into phase 3, that puts us in a very good position because once that happens, these judges in the courts, they're gonna lose their protection, and they're not gonna have any place to hide. And then we expect the judges that are, Americans, true Americans, to step up and do the right thing. So we're ready to indict the United States Supreme Court judges as soon as this happens and we understand who exactly is the enemy. We've indicted about 30 or so federal judges. We've sent all of our information to Attorney General Barr. We've asked him for U.S. attorneys for prosecution. They've been kind of silent, and we kind of understand that. We don't want to push them too hard, but we do expect that they're going to be backing us up and doing the right thing once this time of collapse takes place by the deep state. But meanwhile, between at this point, since we started filing papers as far as making decisions and orders from the court, that's what we are, under the auspices of the court itself up in the Northern District of New York. So we're filing those papers, and we're nailing it to the door. It doesn't matter to us whether they respond at this point or not. It's only one more nail in their coffin. Their contempt for the people and the law is clear. And again, it'll be revealed quite soon on who really the enemy is and who really is standing with us. Meanwhile, we're preparing also to take over the political process here in the United States. We're opening up and teaching people how to become elected committeemen. That's something that has been expunged quite some time ago. We haven't had an elected committeeman probably going back into the 30s or the 40s, maybe the 50s, but it's been a while since there's been an elected committeeman. And we're resurrecting the elected committeemen across the nation. So we're looking for people to get involved, to come learn the process, and participate in the saving of America here. We also, of course, as the last time we were here, we talked about the administrations that we're building across America in every single county, the 4 administrators to be the people to orientate and the grand juries and the trial juries in order to bring a lot of these people to justice and to prevent the people that we send to Washington and to our state capitals from breaking the law, because we need to indict these people. Clearly, they're breaking the law by taking all this funny money and selling their votes to special interest groups and just ignoring we the people. And from the committeeman's perspective, if they're not obedient to the Constitution, we can remove them by recall within 90 days of walking a petition. So it's up to the people now. Donald Trump is doing a great job making America great, preparing the way, working on the economy, working on many, many things, getting America strong again. And once the collapse comes, it's up to the people now to fill the power vacuum that will occur, because we need to take back the courts, take control of the courts, and take control of the political process. Right now, the deep state controls both of them. And when they go down, power vacuum will be there, and the people must fill them. So we must be ready. We must be educated and ready. We need about 30,000 people to really do it right. We'd like more, of course, but 30,000 is plenty. But we can accomplish that with less than that. But 30,000 is the desired number. Benjamin Franklin, I believe it was, that said that we don't have government by the majority. We have government by the majority that participates. And so we need 30,000 good patriots, men and women, to step up and take these positions. So if you're interested in saving this nation and becoming a part of this and getting educated in order to do so, because as Jefferson said, if the people expect to be ignorant and free, they expect what never was and never will be. So therefore, only we the people can truly save America. Donald Trump can bring us to a point, but to maintain it, the people have to maintain it. As it was written in our Declaration of Independence, we have government by the consent of the people, and we are teaching people how to be the consentors of our government, how to remove anybody who is not being obedient to the law of the land and keeping their oath, and taking all that special interest monies. So nationallibertyalliance.org and become a member and get into our courses. We have 2 courses. One's a civics course, and we have a government by consent course. Both of them are pretty long, large, courses, but they're very in-depth, very involved, very educational, interesting, exciting, and so on. And once you get through those, we suggest that people take the consent of government course first, because we really need to be prepared to take these committeeman positions next year, and we also need to be prepared to take also the positions for the administrators for the courts of law. In other words, those who will orientate the grand jury, the trial jury, make sure they're not, what would I say, poisoned, okay, by the system that exists. So that's kind of where we're at right now at this point. But we do need the people now. We got about 8,000 people. We need, and of course, not all of them are active in the sense of taking positions. Right now, we need 15,000 people to take on a new job. It's the administration. We need 4 people for every county in America. So we have a lot of openings for that. It's a paid position. It's a career position. It's a rewarding position. You get to work with the juries. And also we need about 15,000 people to take the political side of things by filling in the committeemen. We need at least 5 people in every county. So there's a little over 3,000 counties, so it's about 15,000 people. And then we can educate those who have been in there thinking they're committeemen, thinking that their voting counts, and we will train them and teach them the Constitution and how to become elected committeemen, and then we will be able to take this nation back completely. And we'll be able to maintain it. So that's kind of where we're at.
Good stuff, good stuff. You mentioned the 1934 Act.
Right.
That wasn't the only act of that year. The Telecommunications Act, which meant all communications and all forms of communications came under the auspice of the military. And so this falls on to what happened in 1933, wasn't it, where basically they sold all the American people as chattel.
That's right. Yep.
And carried on with their fun and games.
And the beginning of that started with the Organic Act of 1871. That's when they started the construction of law, or statutory law, really, in order to incarcerate we the people. We've become really imprisoned in their statutory prisons, and it's been getting worse and worse. And thank God for President Trump being able to get into office and turning all this around and giving us, we the people, the opportunity now to take back control of our nation.
Yes, we've been working closely with Trump on a number of items. Obviously, the economy being one of them, tax and the FEMA issue, is to name but a few. You mentioned earlier about Mr. Barr. Is it not the case?
General Barr, yep.
Yeah, that John Durham is the one to approach, isn't he? Doesn't he have license, so to speak, for want of a better word, to open up a common law court?
Well, yeah. Well, again, he's the primary mover of things, but of course, Barr is the orchestrator of that whole process. And we have been copying them. Everything we've been doing for goodness, actually more than 3 years, because we started copying them. The president, and actually we probably started copying the Attorney General back after Donald Trump became president. But we've been copying Donald Trump about 6 or 8 months before he became president. The people that were working with him out west when he was running for election the first time around, and some of our people out in Oregon met up with him when we were working with the problems out there with the Bundys and the Hammonds and Lavoy Finnegan's assassination. And when they saw our paperwork, they seemed to have been interested in it, so they asked us to be kept abreast with what we're writing and doing. So we've been sending papers to them for a long time. Our papers are very, very educational. In our papers alone is a huge, huge education, because it lays the system out, the problems and everything, the way the law should be. What is true law? What's the difference between law and equity? A lot of things are explained in there. And it also is quite clear to see how it is that these people have taken over our nation, through the, first of all, by covering up the 13th Amendment, the original 13th Amendment, and then coming up with the 14th Amendment, which changed our rights, our unalienable rights to civil rights, and then the 16th Amendment, which enslaved the American people with an income tax and also permitted the tax on property, and the 17th Amendment, which removed the powers and the authority of the state, took away their sovereignty by removing their right to suffrage in the Senate, and making senators elected by the people and no longer elected by the state legislators. So the states no longer have that will or authority. It used to be when a senator went to Washington, he or she was there to do the will of the state legislators. And now there is no more connection to that, so there is no will of the state no more. So they've lost their sovereignty through the 17th Amendment. And we need to overturn all this. It's very easy to overturn it. It's not, first of all, it's null and void anyway, because it's repugnant to the Constitution. The original 13th Amendment, which prevented bar attorneys from taking office, and that was the major problem they had back in 1819. A lot of our founding fathers were still alive back in those days, and they were trying to infiltrate our country and through our Congress and also our state legislators, to destroy our law and bring us under statutes, under the same type of problem and situation they created in Britain or England. And so that was the 13th Amendment. It was for that purpose, to prevent that from happening. And then we have the American Bar Association and many other organizations connected with the American Bar Associations that are training and teaching people, particularly lawyers, but telling everybody that common law has been abrogated, that it has been merged together with equity, which is an impossibility, because common law has nothing to do with statutes and codes and regulations or any of those things. That's all for elected individuals, appointed bureaucrats, maybe people just really employed by our governments. And so that's what all that is for. There's 57 titles, and it's for them. Title I, I believe, is for Congress. It controls Congress, what they can do, what they can't do. I think it's Title III that controls the president, and he has to stay within the law of what he can do and what he can't do. Of course, the Constitution is the beginning of the vestment of power, but we gave our legislators the power and the authority to write the necessary sort of regulations, codes, and statutes in order to control all of the government agencies and the people therein, sort of like policies and procedures that a corporation would run. But these hold a bigger penalty should they break certain parts of these rules or regulations or codes. But in any event, this is what we need to take this whole process, and it's up to the people to do this, to take this whole process back in the judicial process and the political process. So.
Yes, I agree. You mentioned 1871 earlier. That was pretty much the year, like 1933, 34, when everything changed. The Constitution, the original Constitution, was changed in favour of their own Constitution, and also the right to be a government also entered that year, and we were replaced with a corporation.
Right. Well, that's when they created a state within a city, and they put it under municipal law. And your corporation started, and and I don't know how long it was going before that, but they were already working on incorporating our counties, incorporating our towns, our villages, our cities, and they were all under municipality law. which is the law of the city, which is civil law, which comes originally from Babylon, came from Babylon to Rome, to Justinian, right here into the United States. And in 1934, they accomplished their goal of subversion and destruction of our whole law, the Constitution. But it's still there. It still has some power, and it's up to the people to pick it back up and reestablish the law. And that's what we're doing here at National Liberty Alliance. We need as many people as possible. And anybody listening to this, please don't think that the other guy's doing it, because they're not. You need to do it. Everybody needs to do it. Everyone should become a committeeman at least once in their lifetime. It's a 2-year commitment, not a big deal. It requires about 40 hours a year of your time, and it's usually around election time. Most of that is around, the early elections, and we get to interview the people that we're going to be putting on the ballot. And that's how people get on the ballot, by the way, through the committeeman process, which has been taken over. Okay, the people don't control that anymore. We need to take it back. And we need to do this on a grassroots level. So most of this takes place at the primary elections. So the big job is really interviewing people that want to run for office in the election districts that you're affected by within your town and county. And this should be a job that everybody would love to do, to quiz them. If these people don't know the Constitution, we need to ask them questions on the Constitution. And if they don't know the Constitution, then we need to tell them, hey, go get an education, go to National Liberty Alliance, take the government by consent course, and then come back. And when you can answer these questions, we'll put you on the ballot. But they need to understand the Constitution. And obviously, if we're going to quiz them on the Constitution, obviously we need to know the Constitution. So we need to take these courses. That's how we need to prepare for it now. This is all coming up, and I think things are going to hit real hard come January and February, and probably, we're coming to the end of this year now, so I don't know how much is going to really happen. They may hold a lot of this stuff off until after Christmas and New Year's, and then that's when the hammer's really going to drop. And that's my presumption. I don't know that for a fact, but it is coming soon. And when that hammer drops, we have to be prepared. But the elections to the committeemen, there are a few states that may be going through the process as early as January or February. But most states are going a little later, March, April, and May, and even into June. And there's like a 6-week window that you get to run for committeemen. And it's a very simple thing to run for committeemen. You only need maybe a half a dozen to a dozen signatures from people within your election district, which is, in very few cases, it's more than that. And then you get onto the ballot if there's someone challenging you. But since nobody's been running for probably 50, 60, 70 years, there's no one there to challenge you. So you will be elected. You'll be deemed elected at the primary election. It's the only person elected at the primary election, by the way, is the committeeman. Everyone else is nominated. The committeeman is nominated through a designating petition, getting 6 to 12 or, at worst case, 20 signatures. And then if there's no one running against them, then no need to go into the ballot. They are deemed elected. That's what the law says, that they're deemed elected. And then they get to take up that job for 2 years now to decide who is going to be in the office of whatever affects that election subdivision, that election district.
Yep, you mentioned the bar. The bar people who pledged their allegiance to the British Crown.
Well, we got to realize something.
Wonder how many are actually aware of that.
A lot of we got to be really careful with that, because we've done a lot of research in these areas. I've spoken to lots and lots of lawyers. They're really duped. They get these people. First of all, they get our people young out of school. Okay, if you go to schools now, they're teaching them how to be socialists, and I really mean hardcore socialists. I've been in these schools. I see what they're doing, and I see what they're teaching. And we need to stop that. And that's another plan that we do have for hopefully next year. Once we get into the courts, we want to start moving, working with the committeemen and working with the administrators and all volunteers to get into the schools to bring back the Constitution and the study of civics. But these bar attorneys, they really are true believers. They do not understand. They have no understanding or knowledge of the common law. They don't really know or understand the Constitution. They couldn't tell you the difference between, the Fifth Amendment and the First Amendment, of course, within reason, and they don't really understand what common law really was. They don't really even understand the difference between equity and common law. They've been taught only equity, which is statutes. And again, in 1934, they merged those two together, and they teach all these lawyers this. So it's in their teachings. But they are enemies of the people, and they do need to be removed from government. Any bar attorney needs to be removed from government, or at least to give up their bar allegiance, shall I say, and take a course. Take a course in the Constitution. Again, we can't put these people on the ballot and send them to Washington or to our state capitals, or even be leaders in our towns, townships, and cities and villages, unless they know the Constitution. But again, if we don't know the Constitution, how can we expect them to know it? They all raise their hands, including the sheriffs, and they swear to defend and support the Constitution. That's an oath they take, but they have no clue what the Constitution is. So they really are lying, and a lot of them don't realize it. When we approach sheriffs with problems and talk to them, they go to talk to the county attorney and get their understanding of the law from them, and they don't know the law at all. All they know is equity, statutes, codes, regulations, and they think that could be applied towards the people, and it can't. We're under the law itself, period. And the key point to the law, only one thing you need to know in the law, and that is do no harm. You do harm to someone, you've broken the law. Do no harm to no one, you have not broken the law. It doesn't get any more difficult than that.
Yeah. Do you think that, you mentioned about some of them are politicians who are also bar lawyers. My understanding is it's somewhere between 70 and 80% that are in Congress that would have to be.
Yeah, it is a very high percentage, and there are over 80,000 lawyers working in Washington, D.C. as we speak. 80,000 lawyers. Every time you turn around and get involved with anything, there are lawyers there nibbling at the whole thing and seeing how they can distort it and make it benefit whatever it is, the purposes that they want to make it benefit. And that is the problem. Whenever you deal with any kind of a bureaucrat, elected or appointed, or even just someone who's just employed, whenever you're dealing with one of them and you kind of challenge them, next thing you know, they're talking through a filter. You're talking to a lawyer. And of course, often they'll call the local police, and within the building, it's supposed to be the sheriff really that controls this, but sometimes it isn't. And they'll come real quick to wherever you're at and intimidate you, stand behind you, and do all these crazy things to really intimidate us. But again, we have to change these things. The United States Supreme Court has ruled on a couple of occasions that silence when you have a duty to speak is fraud, and anybody who's elected, when asked the question, has a duty to speak and not call their filters, the lawyers, to come speak on their behalf, because we're not addressing our government anymore, our elected officials, when we're talking to the lawyers. They're not supposed to be talking to us through and with lawyers, but that's what they do. And we need to stop this. And one other thing about the committeemen I wanted to make a note of, the committeemen have the power and the authority, and we're going to teach and enforce this across this nation. They have the power and the authority to require the opening of the box for the hand counting of ballots. It doesn't take that long because it's all broken up into election districts. Each election district doesn't have any more than 400 or so families. Maybe 400 in each party is the maximum, 800 members, and so 800 800 families. And so, when you really look at it, it's not going to take long to count the votes. I don't know what the percentage of the votes would be. Maybe it's 40% or 30% of the people vote during that time, so it's not even 800. So it's not that many ballots to count. But when you have something electronic counting the votes, that's counting the votes in secret, and anybody can alter and change that very easily, and there's no control over that at all. So the voting of the counts, they could do all their counting electronically as much as they want, but we need that paper ballot, and we need to count that ballot and by hand, and they need to be certified. There's a process that's been laid out originally that stood up until about 1912, somewhere around there, 13, 14, when in New York at least, the whole law changed and was turned upside down, and it was multiplied by maybe 6 or 8 fold. I mean, that's how much statutes they put in here in New York, just in the turn of 1 year there, and they hid a lot of things in the election. That's when they hid the committeeman, and eventually they concealed the committeeman, and then they created a person who thinks they've been elected a committeeman, and they're not. They're really controlled people, but the committeemen need to count the vote. That's the other thing. So their big job is interviewing people, putting them on the ballots, and then being there at least at the end of the election day for the counting of the votes. That's their job. So it's a very rewarding job. You don't get paid for it, but it's something we all have a duty to do. So at least one time in your life, it's a 2-year service. That's how long the period is that you fill that elected position. But everyone should do that at least once in their lifetime.
Yes, you mentioned about 40% who vote in an election, unless you're in Florida or Ohio. Then it goes up to 140%, and this is, technology can help. It's a convenience, but can also hinder. And yes, we need control of to retain both. Until we can clean the system out, then the paper ballot has. Even after we clean the system out, we got to continue the counting of the votes, the hand counting of the votes. We don't really even need the electronic system. No. The reporting system worked well. It's not a big deal. Reports are certified from each election district, and it moves from one place to another. You got so many election districts that comes together in the town, then into the county, into the state, and then into the federal level if there's a federal elections going on. And so it's a very simple job, really. If it takes the people who are being paid to do this, during the election time, if it takes them 3 or 4 hours of work, well, it takes them 3 or 4 hours of work to work those numbers out and to move them up the line accurately. But there is a watcher, and that person is paid. I found out that they pay them about $300 for just a 1 day to be a watcher during the election. But there's a watcher there. And of course, there are people from both parties involved there, so on and so forth. The committeemen are party members, of course, but they shouldn't be into the politics, just the political process. And those people, they should be there to bear witness of the counting of the vote. They don't necessarily get to count the vote, but they can require the vote to be counted and bear witness of it, and it should be certified at that point at the election district by a hand count. There's no other way to get around it, because any other way it can be fudged. Yeah, given who has control of all the electronics, and considering that these very same people who control the electronics are trying to do a coup on Mr. Trump, as we've been warning him for the past a few years now. Now it's becoming obvious. I think the last time you were speaking to various police forces. Has any development been made with?
We were communicating with the sheriffs. We were sending them memorandums by fax, and many other people elected in elected positions. We had 10 fax machines running 24/7. And we're faxing 1- and 2-page memorandums to educate the sheriffs and a lot of people in elected positions. But we were doing a big focus on the sheriffs. We did do a major mailing of information to all of the sheriffs. There were 3,000 plus sheriffs in the United States. But what we found is a lot of the sheriffs, they don't understand this. And here is the unfortunate thing, and this is not only for the sheriffs, it's for the people too. We've been trained, brainwashed. We've been trained to brainwash that you don't have the ability to go into a courtroom, for instance. You got to go hire a lawyer if you have a legal problem. If you have a religious crisis or concern, they train us to go find a priest or a rabbi or someone, a pastor or someone. But the truth is that we need to go direct. We're going to go to God. We go to the Bible. Go directly to God. And if you're going to go into court, no one knows your case better than you. You need to be able to get into that court. And it shouldn't be a complex process. And a court of law is not a complex process. It's really all about the facts. Okay? And that's what drives ultimately the courts. But people have been trained, for instance, to understand the law, the political process, the judicial process, that it's too complicated for them. But nothing could be further from the truth. We here at National Liberty Alliance are teaching people the simplicity of these things. It's really simple, and this course will teach you it. And we're writing a book, and at some point you can purchase the book, and it'll be laid out in such a way that you can find things very quickly. You can find things that'll help you in court, how to even file a paper for court. We're going to teach everything. And what the difference between law and equity is, and how a court of law actually operates. And it's really quite simple. And also, we should not be paying for justice. They're charging us money every time if we open up a court case for a lawsuit. They charge us here in New York. It's $310. In the federal level, it's $400. On the appellate level, and the federal level, they want $500. We should not be paying for this. Even the Supreme Court has ruled in past times that this is free. Justice is free. It should not be charged upon. You go back to the Magna Carta, and it says in the Magna Carta, justice is free to all men. So it shouldn't cost us this kind of money. You get just as much justice as you can afford, they say. But even if you have $1 million, if you're up against the establishment, you're not going to win anyway, so you don't get any justice. But we the people need to take this back. I go back to Jefferson. If a people expect to be ignorant and free, they expect what never was and never will be. You cannot have liberty. You cannot have your heritage. You cannot have control of your government, consent of government, unless you are reasonably educated with a proper education. That's what Jefferson spoke about, a proper education. And I can tell you, I have searched the planet looking for a proper education. I have not found it. We created a proper education at National Liberty Alliance.
And another thing to add to that as well is, like some of our members, especially at the more national leadership, have been reaching out to certain sheriffs. And there has been a lot of success educating a few sheriffs right now in a certain area of the country. So we are actually making a lot of progress there. But it seems as though whenever you have like this email communication or even fax communication, there's just too much disconnect. You really have to go at it in a local level and actually be the person to reach out to your sheriff or local politician or whomever that authority figure may be you're going after. So we are seeing a little bit more success getting to certain people when we take that approach and teaching them as opposed to sending out a lot of this information.
Isn't it the case, John, currently that maybe this comes into equity, that all the courts are run for profit and they're all getting a cut out of it, including the high priest and high priestess who sit in the judge's chair?
Well, absolutely. They all get this mostly in the retirement packages. They get these huge, unbelievable retirement packages. They get these, sometimes they get these bonuses. For instance, and this is something we're addressing to the United States Supreme Court right now. because this is an act of treason. They have permitted the Federal Reserve to act as if it's a federal agency and has some reserve, which is untrue, and they know it's not true. And they've written a very special law for them, USC Title 26, and which is not law. It's not an enacted law at all. It has no jurisdiction at all. It doesn't even describe a jurisdiction within it. Nevertheless, it's written up in such a way as to be able to, for the IRS, on behalf of the Federal Reserve, to take you into a court. And so what they do is they rent a courtroom in the federal building, in the federal courthouses, so they appear to be also part of the court system, the judicial system. And the judges that are working in that federal court system are hired out and paid extra money to sit in on these cases, and are given bonuses as much as $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in bonuses if they get a conviction of the individual on trial. That's how corrupt the system is. They're doing it right underneath, in the federal district courts, right underneath the nose of the United States Supreme Court, and they know it. They know that they have abrogated or claim to have abrogated common law by fusing together law and equity, which is an impossibility, and they say it right on their website. And we make it clear it's treason. And we're coming out after them. We're going to go after them. We're going to indict them, and the indictments eventually will be fulfilled. We will keep nailing it to the door. Every week we try to send something up there, keep nailing it to the door. And it's just one more pound, one more hammer, one more nail, and eventually, again, when the deep state collapse, they're going to collapse too, because they're in very bad behavior. They are tyrants, and they're guilty of treason, and they need to suffer the consequences. And we will know which ones they are when the protection is no longer available.
Yes. That will include probably all of them in the highest positions. You don't get into those positions.
Very many of them. Close. Well, I have a feeling that more than half of the U.S. Justices are on our side. I'm talking about the United States Supreme Court. As far as the federal district courts, I doubt anywhere's probably maybe 30% of them might be reasonably okay. And I don't even know if there's that many. You know, I think almost all of them are so corrupt and have been involved in so much, unlawful activities that there is no salvation for them within the system. The olive branch won't even be able to be taken by them because once we get the complaint back from the people and the people understand what's happening and what's going on, they're saying, wait a second, this judge, they destroyed my life. They got to pay for all that. Okay, we can't save them for that.
No. I'm led to believe Carl keeps me informed occasionally what's going on, but you've added some new courses onto the website since your last visit. Can you speak a bit about them?
Well, yeah, the civics course is still there. It's still the same. It's about 120 hours. It's a very good course. It really is focused in on explaining to the people where we're at, what has happened, and how we got here. But the solution to how to get out of it and to save this nation, that's in the other course that we put up, which is called the Government by Consent course. And it's probably as big a course as the civics course. And we did have a constitutional course, but it was a kind of a weak course. You know, we put it together quite quickly. But now in this course, it's a more in-depth, very, very in-depth study of the Constitution. But there is a lot in our history and what our heritage is about, and what law is, and what equity is, and how the courts work as far as the judicial process works, and a lot of things leading up until you get into the Constitution itself. And the Constitution is going to be, it's the largest chapter. We're working on that right now. It's Chapter 7. So we got the first 6 chapters up. Chapter 7, we got, a lot of it is completed. You know, we're just trying to, finish up, the tail ends of it. In a couple places we're still researching to make sure we get some good, sources on our conclusions. But Chapter 8, I think we have probably 13 or 14 chapters. Pretty much all the chapters after Chapter 7 is almost completed. We just got to go up and clean that up. So I've been hoping that before this month is out, I was hoping to have had it done by now, but we have so many papers going out, so much writing, so much things we're doing, and we need more help. We don't have enough help, doing the day-to-day affairs. So anybody who wants to come and volunteer with that, we have all kinds of things that need to be done. But I think hopefully before this month is out, we will have the course completed and totally up there. But again, most people are still working through the first 6 chapters. But we took down the constitutional course because, again, it was kind of weak. It was something we put together relatively quickly, and we need to be more specific and give more details, get more into the depthness of what's involved in whatever part of the Constitution we're looking at in the Bill of Rights, and looking at the debates and why it went this way and that way, what the balance of power is in that Constitution. That's a very important thing to understand. The balance of power in our Constitution, is really between we the people who ordained and established. We're not found inside the Constitution, although we are found in the Bill of Rights as far as listing out the Bill of Prohibitions. Thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that. But nevertheless, we the people ordained and established that Constitution. So we have Article 1, of course, which is for our legislative body. We have Article 2, which is for the executive branch, and Article 3, which is for the judicial branch, and various other things going into 5, 6, and 7. But the power is between the 3 branches of government, the states, and the people. So, and the people get to trump it all. We can negate anything we want, or we can nullify anything we want at any given time. And that's the proper way of a government by consent. And the whole process is there. History is there. We have all the sources to prove our positions and our conclusions. And the people need to understand that. This is power. This is how the people have power. Without it, we don't have power. We must maintain control of our government. So the power structure, the balance of power built in the Constitution can never be changed or altered in any way, shape, or form. But the only thing they can change is simple things like, or what times or what months they may meet, or when the president takes power. Those kind of things could be changed, and how they work out things within their rules system and everything in Congress. All those little things can be changed. But the power divide cannot be altered in any way. And the 16th Amendment altered that power structure, the 14th Amendment altered that power structure, and the 17th Amendment altered that power structure. They're null and void because they're repugnant to the body of the Constitution, which includes the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence.
Well, this will probably be the last question before we go into music break. But is it more difficult for you, John, and the National Liberty Alliance operating, given it's based in New York? As our show has covered fairly extensively, it is the proverbial cesspit in terms of corruption, fraud, and also heinous crimes against humanity. Is that impeding your progress because it's in New York?
Well, not really. Probably would best to be in this pit here. New York is a great place to live. Unfortunately, they make it very difficult for us to live over the past 20, 30 years especially. But remember, all these communist or socialist, whatever you want, I think you can call them socialist easily, that are in our state congresses, both houses, and the governor himself, they're all supported and brought there mostly by the New York City. There's a high population down there, and each one of those boroughs have close to 1 million or 1 million plus. So there's quite a bit of a high population down there. But when you get upstate, it's mostly conservative. And again, I wish I could say constitutionalists. And conservatives might think they're constitutionalists, but there's much they need to learn to really be a constitutionalist and to really be able to enjoy and understand and defend and protect their liberties. So we really need to do that. But this is a good place for the battle. It's a good place for the battle. It's a good place to live, though, in many ways. But it's a good place for the battle because we are battling someone like the governor here in both houses. They come up with the SAFE Act, and they're coming up with all these different things, abortion after birth. I mean, so we need to be here to fight those battles also. But also remember, liberty was born in this part of the world, Pennsylvania and New York and Virginia. But the northeastern part was a big part, particularly New York and Pennsylvania and Jersey was a big part of the birth of liberty. What better place to be than to relight the lamp of liberty, but here also in the same area?
Yes, I agree. It's become difficult. New York, obviously there's lots of people. You have lots of very good members, including Carl from New York, but the depth of the fraud and corruption in that place stinks to high heaven across the whole country, and kind of impacts the whole country.
But remember one thing: New York gave us Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
And he came from the heart of New York City. Me too. I was born and raised in the Bronx. So.
Yeah, it's just that. Will it have? How can I put it? Given there's a large volume of multi-billionaires in that region, does that make your role more difficult?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going after a certain governor or a certain senator or a certain judge, given the amount of corruption and funds available in that city,
well,
does that make it difficult?
I could say we've been met with very little resistance. I know they'd love to shut us down. They did send. We've been visited. I've been personally visited by the FBI on 3 occasions, and also the Treasury Department paid me a visit. And then they left, and we haven't heard hide or tail of them. The Treasury Department wasn't so friendly, and they were in error in their thinking. We corrected on a couple of things that they thought was something which wasn't, and they had a difficult time accepting it. But I know they had to go back and check us out, and I'm sure they realized certain things. The FBI, they came wondering if we were sovereign citizens, all that stuff. And we all know what's connected to the meaning of those words, why they say those things. And but we had good conversations with them. We showed them the papers. They said that you said this and you said that. And I said, I never said that, but I'll tell you who did. It was Thomas Jefferson. And by the way, that was said by George Washington. And I showed them in the papers. And we've had good long conversations, and they were really educated by it. And they all left on the 3 occasions, left saying that we don't find a problem here. Keep up the work, and c'est la vie. So they stopped sending the FBI. The FBI generally, and most of the FBI agents, they're all good people, and they're trying to do what they got to do. It's the upper tier that's the problem, and the corruption is there. All these FBI agents, we know who sent them out here. The judges sent them out here because they don't like what we're doing. But now we think, I think we got some fear set in them, and that's where we're supposed to be. When the people fear the government, we have tyranny, and when the government fears the people, we have liberty. And I think we're moving that pretty good here. So we're not being. I haven't experienced any really bad attacks at all, really. Again, they tried to assault us by using the FBI and the Treasury Department, but that didn't work out. We're very much on the law. We're very careful in what we say and positions we hold to make sure we can support it with good sources that built this nation.
Yeah, it's echoing what we said in our shows, the lack of knowledge in all departments, whether it's the FBI, the CIA, the government, the senators, or the Treasury. Kind of intrigued as to why the Treasury would get involved. But then the Treasury is kind of run by the same people that run the NYPD, which is Citadel and Vice, which operated for them on behalf of Hillary Clinton. who seems to run an awful lot in New York, as we know. And this is part of the problem, but the lack of knowledge on all levels is frightening in this country, and essentially we have to start again from the basics.
Right, and look at when we have a government that believes we're a democracy, when in fact we're a republic, and they don't understand the difference between the two. It may be true that we may choose some of our representatives democratically in a democratic way. It's kind of a combination for the president. The states get to choose the president, but the negotiation, the agreements that they came up with, well, let's take the people, let the people vote within the states, and then, we have the electoral thing. And this way, then the votes, whatever number of votes is accounted for each of the states goes towards that individual, which works out very well. In this way, the highly populated states like New York and California, they don't get to really control the elections because they can take over Chicago, and they already have, and the cities in California and here in New York City, they take over the big populous areas. They don't need to visit too many states to really get elected, and they can constantly control who becomes president. And that's what the Democrats have been working on for 100 years, and they do control those areas. So if they get rid of the electoral votes, then of course we would have an imbalance of power, and the states wouldn't have their say in the election at all, because it'd be controlled by the couple of major cities that control everything. Chicago being added in that, Illinois, and so on. So when we look back in to the way they put this together, it was very well put together, but we certainly are not a democracy. And we are the only common law republic of the world. The only one. There is none other. And people need to understand how powerful that is and what that really means. The authority that we, the people, have is given to us by God. We received it directly by God through the Declaration of Independence, which is a covenant with God. And so we receive our authority to govern ourselves and his liberty when we ask to live under his law, okay, which is where Israel was and Britain was for a short period of time, and now the United States became to be under that position. We've lost our way. Now it appears that we're having a revival and a refocus back to the law and to the republic that we are. So we have the power and the authority to create our own government, and we did. And we created it through the Constitution. We ordained and established that Constitution and vested 3 branches of government with certain powers, certain authorities, and certain jurisdictions. And they're very well defined. And all we have to do is enforce that paper. It's not a contract. Okay, it is a constitution, a paper, an order that vests power into these 3 branches. And if we really enforce that Constitution upon our elected individuals and our appointed individuals and the people who are just employed, politics is not needed because everything is already worked out. The orders are there, the powers, the authorities, the jurisdictions, what they can do, what they can't do. It's all laid out in there. It's very clear. So politics could disappear, and we do have a plan to try to eliminate politics without, of course we need the political process, but we don't need the politics because politics is only one group going up to try to get more power, more authority, and the edge over the other group. Well, our political process was not set up for the politics involved because everything is already laid out and decided. We don't need to know. Congress doesn't need to, special interest groups or anything. We all have the same rights. Nobody should get anything special. But we can get rid of politics if we exercise the political process through the Constitution.
Yeah. Right, we're going to have a music break, and we'll be back with more from John, Carl, and hopefully Gerard, if he's joined us, straight after this break. Time for a cool change. Here says all on the show. Right. With the things that are going on, John, has National Liberty Alliance being able to get together some sort of a package, not so much from the People's Club, because we are bound by certain rules and it would be classed as political, but should Mr. Trump initiate certain changes, some of which we are expecting, how quickly could National Liberty Alliance transition from the current court to a common law court? Would you need to start off with one courtroom? Logistics, what I'm asking is, logistic-wise, are National Liberty Alliance ready, and could it be funded?
Well, the funding won't be a problem once we establish the common law and the proper process of law that we not only set up, but that we, the people, deserve. The court systems are already there. The judges are already in place to deal with equity. Magistrates are there to deal with as administrators in common law courts. So all those things are still there. The plan ultimately is to win the battle against the United States Supreme Court and the federal districts. You know, we sued all 94 federal districts and the United States Supreme Court and both houses of Congress. But we need to win the battle with the case at hand that we've been working on for years. And this battle goes back quite some time. A lot of people have picked up this battle, but the real battles in the courts and preparing for the court started in 1999 by an individual, Robert Schultz, with We the People. And he moved things through the court process into the system. We sued the government for redress of grievances, and they failed to answer. They remained silent. We've had a couple of events out there in Washington, D.C. that was covered by C-SPAN that laid out the problems of government. They were supposed to show up. They said that they would, representatives both from the administration back in those days, which was Bush at that point in time, and also representatives from the courts and the legislatures. But they never showed up, and we went on without them. And then we went through the lawsuit. Then we went through the third, goodness, why did I forget that? Continental Congress. Okay, we elected representatives across the nation. You know, I ran an election booth to a district out of one of the offices I had here in Poughkeepsie, New York, and there were others, and we elected our representatives to attend the Continental Congress. We came up with a paper of freedom. I forget exactly what we called that name of that, but I think it was the Articles of Freedom, something like that. We served them on government. They've ignored us there. We then picked up things here with National Liberty Alliance. We picked up the torch and we started filing papers and serving memorandums and informations to government and also writ mandamuses, which is orders to the court, to the government, to the president, to everyone. And this, of course, we started this before Trump. And again, that all, they just ignored us and continued to ignore the people. And then we did file the papers up in, as I mentioned earlier, up here in the Northern District of New York. And we opened up a court for the sole purpose of being under the auspices of the court and filing all our paperwork, turned it into a lawsuit against against the United States Supreme Court and both houses and the federal district courts, and like I said, we're now in the place of making decisions. We are well seated and positioned with a mountain of evidence, a mountain of paperwork, an education. It in itself is an education. Again, we wrote with the intent to educate, to inform, not just to lay out our grievances, but we did it in a way that really stays true to our common law. It's very exciting and interesting, empowering. Reading our papers is empowering. I promise anyone who reads our papers, just read one of our papers and you will come away feeling empowered. We have lots and lots and lots of footnotes for the purpose of educating. We explain and express our meanings, our understanding of what it is that we are saying. We make it clear on the paper. No double talk. There's no loopholes or nothing. It's the pure facts of what the law is. So we're well positioned for everything. We've got over 1,000 people ready to take the administrative process. Well, like I said, we need about 15,000. It's really up to the people come to get educated and take these positions. And again, they're paid positions, highly paid positions, rewarding positions, positions of a power, and has the opportunity to help repair our republic. And so once we take the federal district, once we win in this federal court, the state courts, we will produce lay out a writ mandamus coming down from the federal courts to all state courts to honor and obey, and we will list it out what they have to do. We will take our positions for administrators in every state court within every county in the United States, with the exceptions of some places where there's not many people. A lot of those places would be like in Alaska, and I'm sure some high up in New England areas, and even out west, there's certain areas where, you have very few people living in them, so they go to the counties nearby. So we got about 3,134 counties in America. I think probably 3,000 counties probably have a state court within them. We will take our seat there, and we will then orientate the juries, the grand juries, the trial juries, make sure they're free and independent juries, and they understand the job, and they take the vow to come with a sense of honor, justice, and mercy, and the oath that they'll receive from the judge, and that's the only thing the judge gets involved with. He leaves he's done. We don't even need him anymore. We only need the magistrate to administrate and exercise the authority of the court. An administrator, which is magistrates, they write down very carefully the will of the jury, and after writing it down and confirming it, they put a seal to it, a signature, and executes it through the sheriff, and it gets executed. And that's the process of law. And the people are the ones that run that whole thing. No political animals involved. So once we do that in the federal court, we then force the state courts to obey, and for the people to take control of the administration of the juries. And so every 4 people in every county will be sitting within the courts themselves. There'll be a place for them to work out of and administrate their processes, their judicial processes, which is the courts of law. We will educate them. The 2 courses we have is the beginning of that education. We're writing a handbook, and we will always be here for further education and to answer things that they can't figure out that are new or whatever. But people eventually, as they become educated, they'll become researchers, some of them themselves, and they'll work out a lot of their problems, and they'll share it with us, and we'll share it with the rest of the people. And it'll be a continual thing for the people. So we will take back the state courts rather quickly. We literally could do it in a matter of a couple of months, take back control of every state court in America, if we can get 15,000 people to step up. We only have I think it's about 1,200. Let me look. We have them listed on our website on how many we have. We have a total of 1,135 grand jury administrators right now. We need 15,000. So how fast can we do it? If the people want to get this done and people take these positions, step up and take these positions, get trained now, and in a couple of months you could be trained to be able to take these positions, and other people could be trained as they're working and learning. We'll all be on the job training, and we can literally do it in a matter of a few months.
Good to hear. Do you think somewhere along the line an executive order from Mr. Trump would be beneficial, whereby it shuts down completely the bar court system and initiates common law?
No, I don't think that he'd be able to do that, but we, the people, can. We can easily do that through mandamuses. We can make the order. Remember, people look at freedom and liberty. First of all, you have to understand liberty and what true liberty is. And In order to be free, we first have to think free. And once we start thinking free, we have to act free. And once we start acting free, then we'll truly be free. And so we need to really exercise our true authority. People need to understand what this really means. We, the people, ordained and established this Constitution for them. They need to understand we are above the Constitution. We rule, we consent, we decide. Yeah, the government makes all of the governmental decisions that we have given to them to do. You know, each one of these agencies have a job, and the people need to give this out to individuals to do this, and we broke it up to 3 branches to do this work. But now, as far as governing ourselves, we, the people, are the consenters of what our government does, and we govern ourselves, our own lives. We're not to be controlled by statutes, rules, and regulations, and codes, or any of those things. We're free to act the way we want, and we need to be obedient to one law: do no harm. It doesn't get any more difficult than that. But when government goes astray, or an individual goes astray, then we need to remove them from office. And we could do that from 2 positions, from the committeeman process, or we could do it through indictment if they broke a law. If they're in bad behavior, we can remove them. Or if everything is set up properly, they can do impeachments and do it that way, where they can get rid of their own problematic people. You know, Congress can do that, and they get rid of judges. They can get rid of bad congressmen and so on. But we could do that too. They failed to do it. We have the power and the authority. So again, you know, what people also need to understand is the power of the committeeman. A county chairman in a committeeman and a county chairman can call in any person that's affected within their election district and want to talk with them. They will respond because they know it was the county chairman working with the committeeman to get them into that office, and we can take them out as quick as we put them in. And they know that, okay? That's why they will be obedient to the committeeman. And the committeeman will enforce, anything that they need to enforce. If they don't want to respond and do the right thing, the committeeman can walk the papers, get the signatures, and yank them out of office. People need to understand the powers and the authorities we actually have. We need to be the free people we were meant to be, period.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. One of the biggest transitions we're going to face is getting people away from the fear of authority, because that's what's keeping this whole structure together. You know, in essence, it's collapsed. It is collapsing. Everyone can see that now. But that fear of authority and people not standing in their own power and their own sovereignty, it is going to be a difficult transition. And that's why I'm kind of pleased with the way you're doing things, is empowering people via the website and the courses and whatnot, and giving people the tools to empower themselves.
Right. And, look at our motto, so to speak, if you want to call it that, is that at some point in time, the people must increase and we must decrease. We have the Unified United States Common Law Grand Jury, which is doing the heavy lifting, which is really made up of all the people that are involved with us from every state. But it's only one place where we're focusing, writing papers, doing mandamuses, informations, and so on. But at some point in time, and meanwhile, we're teaching the people how to do these things. And just by doing them, they should be able to see and learn by reading the papers. But we're educating them and preparing them, because this needs to be done on a grassroots level from their own perspectives within their states. We need to have a true grassroots control, and we do that through the committeeman process and through the judicial process of the administrators and the people that come to be a jurist, whether it's a grand jury or a trial jury, respond to that call, especially then. And that's how we take control of all this, and that's how we can be empowered by all this. But we have to pick up, we have to get a new state of mind. We have to really empower ourselves by thinking free. And that's where it all starts. And remember, as I think, I'm pretty sure it was, I got to look this up because I say this all the time, I'm pretty sure it was Franklin. But we don't have government by majority. We have government by the majority of those who participate. We only need a few good people. Only need a few good people. Think about it. We have I'm not sure the population, but it must be around 350 million here in the United States. So of the 350 million people, we only need about 30,000 to take back control. And we will teach and build that up more and more as we go over time. But those people will be able to control everything. And we could do it with less, but I'd like to see a minimum of 30,000. That's sort of our goal. At some point in time, 4 or 5 years down the line, that should grow to hundreds of thousands, particularly with, the committeemen. The administrators is restrained or retained down to no more than about 15,000, because there's 4 positions in every county. In some counties there may be 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 because they're highly populated, but generally speaking, it's 4. And we got that from the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta laid out that process and procedure, and of course we are the common law, so this is what the way we are to operate. But once we take control of those things, again, it doesn't take much. But the people need to respond now. The people need to not think, "Oh, the next guy will do it." Yeah, if you already have a good job and you don't want to leave your job and you don't want to become an administrator, that's fine. There's a couple more things you could do. You can become an administrator. I don't know if I say committeeman or administrator, but become an administrator. But because that's a full-time job that's paid. But to become a committeeman, everyone can do that. Everyone could give 40 hours a year. It's less than that, maybe even. Again, and it's in the evening, and it's for the sole purpose of interviewing people to put them on the ballot. Okay, that should be a job we should all desire. I want to do that job. So we should be able to get 15,000 or 15,000 people easy. That's 5 people per county, okay? And those 5 people in county, again, as I mentioned earlier, will train and educate the other people that are already there. So we will build our numbers up very, very quickly within the first year of taking power. And the committeeman thing will probably fill all that positions within a year. And with people who are educated, properly educated, and watching government like a hawk, and calling out the fouls and making the phone calls and bringing these people back under the chains of the Constitution. And it's a really simple system that our founding fathers have set up for us. Well, we've lost our way. It's been concealed. We don't see it. We are revealing it. The people need to step up and take these positions, and they need to do it now. Now is the time of education and preparation, because in the very near future, months away, the opening for our move is going to be there, and we will make the move and seize the power and give it back to the people where it belongs.
Exactly, John. There's 2 or 3 questions from listeners I'd like you to answer, or Carl. And the first one, is it really possible to detach the existing financial, military, intelligence and corporate entanglements in the modern infrastructure of governance and law?
Well, absolutely, it's possible. And once the people take these positions, we can fix that problem. But remember, Trump already understands this, and he's going to break the ties. So I don't think these people that are involved with the exchange of emoluments and benefiting in different ways because of their positions, whether the military or justice or some elected individual. It doesn't matter. It's all corruption when there's a game going on and money is exchanging and corporations are involved in that connection with government. So all that has to be broken. And whatever is left over when the people take control, it's only a matter of looking, investigating, and finding the problems and fixing them. As soon as they raise their ugly heads, we need to knock them down and take them out. So, yeah, that could be very easily, again, bring government back to the people, get the people in charge and in control of government, and having government by consent, educated people, properly educated people, and then making sure that our elected officials are properly educated and they understand to take their oath serious, and we yank them out real quick as soon as they violate the law. And we will have a government as just as our courts will now become, and our nation will be as just as our courts, and other nations will want to really be like us and do the same thing. After all, the truth of the matter is when America, the idea of America was discovered, the desire was to be like Israel because we are duplicated over as Israel, original Israel, going 1600 BC when Moses came and took them out of Egypt and God delivered them into the promised land. Okay, that government that they have is the very government that we have. We've duplicated what they had. And that's what people need to understand. We've come under the umbrella of the protection of God. And God's going to take care of us. If my people who call by my name shall humble themselves and pray, turn from their evil ways, I will heal their land. And I forget what goes on after that, but let's see. How does it go? If my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and will heal their land. Okay, so that's all we have to do is desire to be under the law, do no harm, and honor God, and it's up to Him. He will protect us. There are stories in the Bible where the enemy was coming up against Israel, and God told the people of Israel, okay, take X amount of people, and go here, and they had three nations coming at them at one time. I supposed hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, and God sent them out with something like blocks of 300, maybe just a few blocks to go take on this whole nation. And they feared that idea, but they trusted in God. And when they went to meet, as they were coming over the hill to come into the valley to meet the enemy, they were all laying there dead. God turned them all against each other. And so God can take care of us. We don't have to worry about that if we just do the right thing and try to be a just people and live under His law and receive His blessings of liberty. Just as in the preamble says that liberty is a blessing. The purpose of government is to protect the blessings of liberty.
The second question, natural law is in complete opposition to the existing methods of governance and law. How would that be reconciled?
Well, I don't see any conflict between equity and law. Equity has its place and law has its place. So if they're talking about, let's take federal law, we have 57 codes. Each one of those codes has a jurisdiction. As I mentioned, I believe, let me see, I may have a note on this. Yeah, I do. Okay. Title I is general provisions. Okay. This is for the operation of government. It has nothing to do with people. Okay. It has to do with the people who are elected, appointed, or employed. Okay. By an agency here, an agency there. Title II controls Congress. It's the law that Congress must follow. It's the guidelines, the jurisdiction, and layout of their authorities as given to them by the Constitution. Title number 3 controls the president. Title number 4, the flags, the seal, and the seat of government, and the states. And it goes on and on and on. Title number 7 controls agriculture. It gets into the commercial activities. We gave them the power and the authority to do these things, and they need to write statutes and law to govern the commercial business, to govern the government itself, the different agencies, and each agency is unique in its own. Okay, so it must work itself out underneath them. Title 34 deals with the Navy. Title 42 deals with public welfare of the people. And it goes on and on and on. So there are 57 different titles. But they don't affect us. That's equity. The United States Supreme Courts, their power, their authority is in equity alone. And the only time they get involved with law is if they're protecting an individual's unalienable right. When you appeal, if you appeal over to the federal district courts and all the way up to the United States Supreme Court on a violation, particularly maybe on a decision that maybe somehow a jury or a grand jury somehow violated someone's rights, well, a jury's decision is final. Cannot be overturned by the United States Supreme Court or anyone. It is final. But if someone's unalienable rights was violated in there, they have the power and the authority to protect that person and to protect that person's rights, so to really, save them from a misjustice. But other than that, the United States Supreme Court is an equity court. They had no power, no authority to make the decision of Roe versus Wade. They stepped on God's toes. They went into his court and took out of his court and made murder legal. They had no power and authority to do that. That's null and void. That does not belong. If someone is brought up for a situation in an abortion, it's up to 12 individuals sitting in a court to hear the case and make a decision, okay? And that's where it belongs, in God's court. So since those laws don't affect us, and even you take traffic court, that might be good for commercial, but it really has no place. And the commercial activities ultimately should be governed and cared for on the state level or the county level. County courts are as lawful as because they deal with the smaller things as well as the state courts. But there is no place in the Constitution to provide for a town court, a village court, or a city court. Okay? They should all be county courts and state courts. And so all of those and all of the statutes and different things and rules and regulations that they've got written up that they apply upon the people to make money. It's all a big cash machine. That's all it is. And all of that is null and void. When the people come into power, those will be shut down. They can no longer continue. So if they shut down the courts, the police, all the police, will shut down because there'll be no money to fund it. You know, the whole process to make money starts off with a town or a village to create a court, then a police force, and work from there. But once there's no income coming in through that police force, it all falls apart. And then it brings it right back to the sheriff and his deputies, okay? And the sheriff and the deputies and the Second Amendment will deal with any problem that we have to worry about.
Yes, this next question is more of a statement. I've pulled a question out of it. It was from one of the listeners. Essentially said the recent path found the CSS-PSG grammar system, which was raw plain language script that is built into using math principles, so the sentence can be certified, verified, accurate both frontwards and backwards. And in terms of the change in any country or legal jurisdiction, personal kinship, or the contracts we make with our own mind, consent is important, and agreement is important. If anyone should know about the postal system and its implications, would it be an organisation such as yours? And I suppose the question that basically comes out of where it's quite a long piece is, can syntax change the current laws, and is there a need for it?
Well, I absolutely not, from my very strong opinion. We looked into that kind of a situation years ago, the syntax, and we found no merit in it. Look at natural law is governed by self-evident truths. That's what natural law is governed by. We don't need anything else to add or to it in any way. But we the people, really have one job, and that is when we go into a court as a jury, that is, to sit down and listen very carefully to the truth. And, any good investigator will tell you that all they do is talk to people and they get answers, and they talk to this one and talk to that one. They find the contradictions. They go back and drill on the contradictions, and they focus on that. And that's what happens in a court. They will figure out, 12 people will be able to sit down and discuss and figure out who the guilty party is and how guilty they may be, what the intent was. They can figure all that out just by examining the facts. There's nothing special more beyond that. But common law is governed by ultimately the rules of common law, okay, which again is truths, unalienable truths that are not unalienable, but truths that cannot be denied, okay. For instance, water cannot run uphill. Who's going to deny that? Here's a common law maxim right here. You're innocent until proven guilty. That's a common law maxim. That comes from the common law. Who can argue with that idea? You are innocent until proven guilty. In order for there to be a crime, there must be an injured party. Who can argue with that? That's a maxim. For every injury, there must be a remedy. That's a common law maxim. You can find common law maxims just by investigating the facts and what's going on, and they will rise up out of the argument, out of the debate, okay, within the courtroom. It'll rise right up, the truth. And that's how common law works. It's a very simple process that men and women, the regular people actually get in. We don't need to know anything about codes and regulations and statutes and these other procedures that take place and the rules in the equity courts. That all belongs to them, okay? And they do need lawyers, not bar lawyers, but they need lawyers. We got to get rid of the bar lawyers. And there are lawyers out there that were not trained by the bar, by the way. I was surprised to find that out. But they do need lawyers to run through those statutes and exercise those codes and represent the president or the opposition or the Congress, or to really interpret the law to the plain people who are in these public positions. So that's needed, but it doesn't affect us. It doesn't affect we the people. It doesn't apply to us. The United States Supreme Court has ruled this over many, many times. That these statutes, I mean, that's for the bureaucrat. It's not for the people. We're under God's law, and the law we're under is a very simple law: do no harm. It gets no more difficult than that. And when a person violates another individual, harms another individual, the idea in common law is to restore the injured party. So the person who did the injury has to restore that injured party. Usually we calculate that in money, because how else are you going to fix things? God laid out a lot of principles. You steal a man's ox, you got to give him back 3. So he's laid out these principles, and we just have to follow those principles. They're obviously logical and obvious, but common law isn't about putting people in jail. It's about restoring the injured party and also the party who injured the injured party. There are 2 groups in a court that need to be restored, both the one violated and the violator. We need to restore that person back into society, bring them to a point of repentance if possible. And it'll work, of course, a lot better than throwing them in a jail cell, letting them sit there, and not even restoring the individual that they injured, and there's no relationship between the two, so that there potentially can be a repentance and feeling bad about what they've done to another person. You see, the laws of the city is upside down and destructive. The laws of God will benefit, and that's the law of the land. That's what we have, equity and law. If you go into Black's Law and research the jurisdictions and the laws, you will find that there are 51 jurisdictions. 50 of those jurisdictions are statutory. 1 is natural law. And they're all called statutes, codes, regulations, and things of that nature. Even though they have the name or the form of law, they are not, it's called positive law, but it's not natural law. And it's different. It doesn't affect the people. Okay, now, of course, most of those laws in Black's Law in the different jurisdictions are applied by different governments, and it does affect the people there. But we're different than the rest of the world. We're the only ones that are under this kind of a system, that we're under natural law, ultimately, a constitution that we the people ourselves wrote under the authority of God through his blessings, via the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, personally, going back to the syntax, I see that mode of operation and wording as complicating and also unwielding as the current legalese system. And the propensity of people at times is to go in things and make them far more complex and complicated than is necessary. I'm for it all making things simpler. We have to go back to basics, and you cannot get any more simpler than the 4 or 5 basic rules or laws of natural or common law, plus the golden rule. That's it.
It's all in the heart. It's obvious unto all men. Anybody who denies the truths, anybody who denies truth, okay, is either the enemy or they're just so self-deceived it's very, very rare, but generally they're the enemy. Only the enemy will deny the idea of an individual being innocent until proven guilty. I mean, look what the Democrats are doing in Congress right now. They're not even giving the president the opportunity to face his accusers. Okay, that's another common law principle. Okay, the right to face your accuser, the right of due process. This is all common law. Our Constitution is nothing but a construction of common law principles. That's what it is. And especially our Bill of Rights makes it very obvious. Okay, Declaration of Independence lays it out clearly and defines it clear as a bell that we're under nature's God and under his law, and we're receiving his liberties for that. And the Constitution is clear. Our government has been created in order to protect, the blessings of liberty. Just reading the preamble. Listen to the preamble. I know you've heard it many times, but just listen to it with the idea of looking for common law principles. It's filled with common law principles, nothing but common law principles. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, at the time, they were a confederacy, and it wasn't very perfect at all. They didn't have a good, cohesive working. They had to create something. So in order to form a more perfect union of the states, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, we do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now, there are 7 principles in here in that preamble. And whenever government performs any duty, whether it's legislative duty, administrative duty, or judicial duty, they must be upholding and fulfilling one of those 7 principles that we laid out right there in the preamble, which is the beginning of our Constitution. And everything in here, really ends up is controlled and put together under maxims, truths that cannot be denied or argued. When you look at the way it's structured and put together, it's so obvious. And again, remember, we got this idea from Israel, 1600 BC. Jefferson went to learn Hebrew when he was a very young age because he wanted to research and understand how that government worked when he was looking for governments. He spoke quite a few. He spoke and wrote in quite a few languages. And I'm not sure exactly how many, but it was quite a few. And Hebrew was one of them because he wanted to really understand the structure of law that they had. And he was very interested in that because the Germanic tribes of the north that came down and protected and assisted and became part of Britain back, 300-400 A.D., roughly at that time period. That's where he started to get a lot of stuff from those people looking back into their common law heritage, which was in Britain. And he discovered that they had a structure and a belief system and a government that was duplicating Israel. They may have been some of the lost tribes of Israel that we hear about. But that interested him so much to learn the language, to study in Hebrew the 5 books of the Bible, the first 5 books, and to see the structure of government that was set up. And we are created under those ideas. We break up everything into tens and pieces. We have the counties. And the counties are broken up into, cities, states, and not cities, states, cities and towns and villages within the towns. And then those are broken up into election districts, and everything is done in tens and hundreds and thousands. And then we come up into the state, and then, of course, the Union of the United States. And the 3 branches of government and the separation of powers, all of that has been duplicated through that process.
I'd like you to touch briefly, we're coming near the end, I'm going to end it around the 2-hour mark, but is it not the case that legalese and the current law with all its statutes and rules and regulations and all that nonsense are all based on the promise or the premise that people are a business or a corporate entity?
Well, you know, the way they've set it up, look, it all started, it's actually started in 1776, as soon as the discrepancy between the Americas and Britain started, and the Declaration of Independence came up. Already they were sticking their fingers into our government in case we were to develop that. And as we did develop that and went through that process, they definitely got into our government, because they started off, of course, with the money, the bank, the national bank, and then the bar attorneys, of course, you know, well trained in their system, coming to bring in the influence of statutes, statutory law, of the common law, which they destroyed in England already. They had already destroyed it in England. Okay, so all of that was moving in to destroy us. And when you go back, it's a construction of law. You know, we talked a little bit about the Organic Act of 1871, and everything, every little piece, the whole thing is a plan and just put in place as time gone on. They were very patient, and it's the construction of law to build all of this as statutory prison. But legalese, okay, legalese, what that is all about ultimately is hiding the truth inside the law. And that's what they've done. Go read the 14th Amendment, and a lot of people really don't see the fact that they have changed our, in that amendment, they changed unalienable rights to civil rights. And you know, it really, I kind of knew there was a problem here when I heard about the 14th Amendment, because every time I went into court, you would hear about the rights of the 14th Amendment. Well, wait a second. We didn't even need the 14th Amendment. We already have all the rights that the 14th Amendment spoke about. We don't need the 14th Amendment. What's going on there? But they always referred back to that. And so it made me realize that something was going on. And when you start to look into it and you see, that's what the legalese is about. When you get rid of the connection between municipal law, which controls the people, municipality law, you know, the law of the city, or you can call it Roman law, you can call it Babylonian law, you can call it civil law, you can call it Justinian law, it's all the same. But when you get back to that, and the legalese that's in there, it's all to hide the truth and to put all of these traps or loopholes and everything in here. But once you take it away from being applied upon the people, all the legalese falls apart, falls away. And when government does its duty to control the commercial processes and the law of the sea and maintain all of that properly, it's just legalese isn't going to be there. There's no benefit for it. But there can be no partnership with corporations and government. Corporatism is Nazism or communism. They're all one and the same, and it's all about the corporatism and ownership of everything by the government and ultimately by a few people, the oligarchy behind the government ultimately, the people of the true elite, so to speak. And it's all about that. We need to unincorporate all of our states, our counties, our cities, our towns, our village. That whole process has got to be dismantled. And it can only be dismantled. Trump can't do that. But you know who can do that? We, the people, can do that. Through the committeeman process, we can enforce and require Congress to go do something about this and get rid of the bad stuff and bring on the right stuff. We can require them to do it, or we'll yank them out of office. We'll recall them. And again, breaking the law, the grand jury can indict and pull them out of office immediately. So there's the power of the people. We need the people to come up, step up, become educated, get a proper education, and take on the authority that they need to take on for yourself and for your posterity. And do not think the other guy is doing it. It's your job. Nobody else's. Just think of you. You need to get out there and become educated and get involved.
Yes. I'd like to bring Carl in, and then I'm going to ask you the same question, John. I don't know whether Gerard is on the call at all.
No, I guess something must have come up. I did speak with him before the call. He said he'd be here, but he was working at the time, and I don't know.
No worries. Yeah. Carl.
Yes.
What is the drive behind National Liberty Alliance?
I think the drive is really to educate people to be their own sovereign selves, At the end of the day, we're really just here to educate and teach each other about, what law really is, the process and the way that things should be. So I think the drive really for anybody who joins us or for the people involved is really to learn and to restore ourselves back to our own sovereignty. So that's my short answer on that.
John? I'll carry on.
Well,
Oh, no. I was going to ask, was that about what you meant, like the drive for people to join, or like my own personal drive, you think? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so my own personal drive then is really to just create a better world than the one I came in. In terms of just the different opportunities that we have to thrive, in a world where there really isn't an easy choice to eat good food, to be healthy, to, be in a place where you don't need to worry about going to jail for 20 years because maybe you did something which is like, smoking or drinking or doing something stupid. And now your life is ruined because you were young and stupid where you're in that position. So just kind of changing the world for the better so that the people around me and myself have an opportunity to really be the best that humanity can be.
Good stuff. John?
Well, National Liberty Alliance, the purpose of National Liberty Alliance is to facilitate a place where people become educated and where they can communicate and organize on a grassroots level. And we've been doing that since we started. That is our main focus. And we teach people the truth and our heritage, and that is the key. And we must come to that and develop a sense of honor, justice, and mercy as we work together to do these things. We try to drill this into the people's minds. As a matter of fact, anybody who becomes a committee man through us, or through the process that we teach, and we hope that they teach that the same way and send them to us to learn this stuff, but they drill into the people, not only the people of the committee men, but also the administrators, that they must come and operate with a sense of honor, justice, and mercy. So at the end of the day, we'll get that which is right. But we're here to empower the people on the grassroots level. We will hold the control of the torch and continue the focus of going after the enemies, both foreign and domestic, particularly, of course, in our government, federal government particularly, to go after those people, those enemies, foreign and domestic, as we teach the people to be able to do the things that they need to do from their grassroots level. But at some point in time, when the people are mature enough to be able to walk, mature educational-wise, mature enough to be able to walk, and with a sense of honor, justice, and mercy, and to patrol themselves and make sure they stay on that path as they exercise the things of common law in their own grassroots level, then again, as I mentioned earlier, National Liberty Alliance must decrease as the people increases. And in at some point, when the people finally come to a judicial maturity and a political maturity, which that can only come through knowledge, once they come to that point, then we will be here as advisors. We will be here as educators for the people coming into the system as people leave the system. We will make sure that people are properly educated to take these positions and to be able to decide who our people are that are going to govern us when they want to get onto a ticket to become elected somewhere, and that to make sure that the people in the courts understand that they are free and independent and must act that way, and also, again, with a sense of honor, justice, and mercy.
Right. Thanks very much, John and Carl, for your time for coming on and giving us an update, and hopefully it will encourage some of our members and listeners on a wider field to get involved. It is up to you. at the end of the day. John's and Carl and Gerard have built the platform, but it's up to you to build the rest of the house, so to speak. And it does affect your life far more than you realise. Lots of energy gets wasted on fruitless and pointless exercises. This is a valid one that's going to fulfill our future and your
and teach our
children's.
children. Yep. Amen.
This is what it's all about. You can't just sit there complaining that things are not going the right way and not participate. Be the change. And as John said many times earlier, you can't just wait for somebody else to do it. That's how we ended up in this situation to begin with. We allowed others to dictate, run and rule our lives. If you want to be sovereign and free, you have to put some energy and effort into rolling that back and then spreading out the empowerment on our own role in society, not their role in society. Their role has never worked for us. John, final thing, some details of where people can find you before we wrap it up.
Well, yeah, come to nationallibertyalliance.org. Read our front page, and right on our front page, there is the plan, the National Liberty Alliance's plan. Let me get to the front page and
it's like a button. It's the first red button.
Right. It says the NLA plan, and that's a plan in a nutshell. That should be the first thing people should read, probably, because it's 23 pages. I tried to do something short, but it's not possible. But, this becomes an education in itself. But when you get through this, you will understand exactly what we're doing, with a good idea of what we're doing, and understand the power structures that we're going to take back. But read through that document and read through our front page, watch the videos on that front page, and I'm sure anybody that's coming looking to do something to save this nation, when they get through that front page, they're going to say, this is the place I need to be. Become a member, take our courses, get involved, volunteer, get involved in a committee. We have lots of committees that we try to get moving along. You can create your own committee, bring them up to the leadership, and if we agree, we can do something with that and just get involved. And the most important thing is think about becoming a committee man. Sign up for that. And even the administrators, you can become a committee man for the first 2 years, but there's no conflict of interest in that. So you could be an administrator and a committee man. And again, it doesn't affect most people's ability to work unless they're working at night, because the work of the committeeman is usually done after dinner, 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock or even 10, whatever they meet for, to interview the people that are going to take control of our work that we've given them, the nation. So get involved. Let's do this. Let's take this nation. Let's take this country back, and let's bring it back to a place of justice.
Yeah. Thanks to John and Carl from National Liberty Alliance, and we wish them all success going forward, and hopefully everyone will have been inspired by this show and can get involved and push this thing along. Right, this has been the Truth.
Godspeed, everyone.
Yep, thank you.
This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. I'll see you all on Thursday. Bye for now.